Hi guys. Today I have decided to go ahead and make my very first video on YouTube, and my channel is going to be centered around paganism, Satanism, witchcraft, and the occult world, which are all pretty huge topics to cover. So we'll definitely have a lot to talk about on here, and I'm pretty excited for this journey. I've wanted to make a YouTube channel for years, and I just never really knew what I would have to talk about. So there will definitely be probably some off-topic videos on this channel, but for the most part, everything is going to be related to witchcraft in one way or another. So I think for my first video, I'm just going to start off and talk about myself for a little bit, kind of introduce you guys to who I am and the journey that I've been taking. My religious journey is a long one. I feel like most people, they kind of change and look around, see what interests them. So I was raised Baptist. My mom isn't really that religious. She's Christian, but she's not really any specific one. Neither of my parents go to church. My father, though, he's always been pretty hardcore religious, very conservative Republican man. He's a Mason, though, which is pretty cool. Even though I disagree with some of the things that are in Masonic history and from what I know. But I do think it's cool that he's involved in something like that. So as far as me, when I was a kid, I was raised Christian. And I was a Christian for a long time. I really believed in it. I felt like it was the place for me. I did feel comfortable in Christianity. But then I believe when I got into middle school, I started having, thoughts that kind of brought me further away from my faith. And I was getting bullied pretty heavily. As most people do in middle school, they get bullied pretty heavily. And it just kind of made me lose faith. It made me think, how could something so terrible be happening to me? And how could I feel so bad when I've always been a child of God? And, I've always prayed, and I would go to church on like Wednesdays, even without my parents. And so it was just like a really hard realization for me and a really hard negative shift. Like, I know that letting go of Christianity and any faith that feels suffocating to you can be a huge relief. But for me, because of the way this change was brought on, it was not a positive shift in my life. And I think it was necessary. It was definitely necessary. And I'm definitely glad that it happened. But at the time, it was not a positive thing. I was not in a good place at all. And I think I was just an atheist at that point. I had, dropped any belief I had in a God and in a higher being, and I just kind of dropped it all. And I didn't need it, and I hated it, and I was just angry all the time. And then when I think my freshman year of high school, my best friend committed suicide, and it was the first time I had ever lost somebody that I was close to, and it was the first time I had ever lost somebody my age, that I knew. And I took that really hard, but it also, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't go through that grief and that pain alone. And I did, at that point, I was becoming more interested in organized religion, and I was studying Islam a bit, I was studying Buddhism a bit, and then when my best friend killed himself, I turned to Buddhism pretty intensely. And it surrounded my life in such a warmth and in such a light that I think that it was exactly what I needed to pick myself up out of that rut that I was in for so long, and, not seeing any hope or any happiness. And, even though I had sort of pushed myself into Buddhism because of something very negative, because of a loss. I truly think that it did really, really help me. And it helped me learn a lot about meditation and a lot about suffering and just feeling your feelings, and just feeling like just because I'm upset doesn't mean I have to be happy. It doesn't mean I have to do something about it. I can just be upset. And it just taught me a lot about waiting. And I definitely really respect Buddhists. I could not do it. I don't have that much, like, what some people would call willpower. I just don't see a reason to ignore human desire. And I'll get into that a lot more once I start talking about Satanism, because that just kind of rung every bell for me once I found it. So from Buddhism, I started getting exposed to crystals and energy healing, and I started buying more crystals, and then I wanted to learn about them and like their metaphysical properties, so I would do research, and from there I was exposed to pagan websites and pagan imageries, and it really sparked it really sparked my interest, because I mean, all my life I've kind of been into darker things. I've always liked witches and warlocks and fantasy worlds, medieval stuff. I always liked that, but I always liked it in a position of like fantasy, like it wasn't real. I liked witches, but I couldn't be a witch, and then I saw these pagan websites and these pictures, and I started reading more about it, and I was like, wow, like I actually could be a witch. Like witches are actually real, which sounds so silly to me now, because like obviously witches are real. Witchcraft is a means of practice. It is nothing supernatural like it's made out to be. And Satanism is just the same way. As much as witchcraft has been painted over and written over, Satanism is just the same. It's definitely much worse in the movies than it is in real life. But yeah, so once I got into paganism, it's just kind of been twisting and turning down every road I could find, just learning, taking in whatever information I could. And I honestly am not sure. Actually, no. What got me like interested in Satanism was actually a podcast that I listened to, and I highly recommend if you are interested in true crime or the occult world or just creepy stuff. It's called Last Podcast on the Left, and it's hosted by Marcus Parks, Ben Kissel, and Henry Zebrowski, and those three guys are just like so intelligent and so hilarious and just like so full of information that I'm interested in. So it's honestly the perfect podcast for anybody, like I said, interested in the occult world or anything underneath. But one of them, the last one I named, Henry Zebrowski, he's actually a practicing chaos magician and Satanist. And so he introduced me to both chaos magic and Satanism, which I'll cover plenty of chaos magic on this channel. But I think I just want to dive in and tell you guys a little bit more about Satanism, because that I'm still a witch, definitely. Witch is how I practice. It's my physical practice. And I like to tell people that my practice looks more like a traditional green witch practice. I use a lot of crystals. I use a lot of herbs. I have a garden. And so I see Satanism more in like my headspace, my moral compass, my foundation of beliefs, and how I see myself and how I live my life, basically. So the first thing that I always like to basically give people who know the bare minimum of Satanism is actually the first thing that I read that made me think, dang, I think I might be a Satanist, which can be a scary thing to say to yourself, even though you've read the truth and you know the truth. But I mean, I've always known Satanists to wear capes and horns and sacrifice babies and worship the devil, and I do none of those things. I might wear a cape once in a while, but there's no sacrifice. But what I like to read is the 7 tenets of Satanism. And this is basically what most Satanists are going to believe. But this was actually a product of the Satanic Temple. There are a couple of different, I don't know, churches when it comes to Satanism. There's the Satanic Temple, there's the Church of Satan, and there's a bunch of other ones too. But those are usually the 2 main ones. I'm not a member of either, and I really don't plan on becoming a member. I just don't really see the reason. I've been in covens in the past, but I just think I don't know, there's almost too much discomfort with inviting other people into my craft for me, because I'm very non-confrontational, and if I disagree with someone, I don't really like... I mean, I'll tell you if I disagree with you, but if we're in a working place, like if we're trying to be working together, it can be hard for me if I don't, if I'm not on the same page as them 100%. All right. Finally gonna read it to you guys now. So the 7 tenets of Satanism by the Satanic Temple. Number 1, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach is to willfully and unjustly encroach on one's freedoms is to forego one's own. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific fact to fit one's belief. 5. One should strive to act with compassion, empathy towards all creatures. 6. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. The last tenet is probably my favorite one. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and in thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over written or spoken word. Now, that's not really what people expect when they're hearing the 7 tenets of Satanism. They almost seem like common sense. They almost seem like, why wouldn't I act this way? I really, really love it because it makes a point for justice to prevail over written laws. So regardless of the law, justice needs to be served, which I think is amazing. What else do I like? I love every tenet is a guiding principle. So it's basically, if you don't agree with any of this, don't do it. You know, this religion, I use religion like that when I'm referring to Satanism because it's so much different than any religion you're going to find. And it's almost like just a belief system. And that's what a religion is, but for me, this religion does not include a God or anything like that. It's just, you have to know that it's important to follow what you actually believe and not what you've been told, and, you know, question everything that you are told and do your own research. And, you know, you have to demand the truth, but you're not just going to be given it. You really have to dig. I'm trying to see. There are a couple of different, I don't know, there's like the satanic sins, because there are sins, which some people, you'll understand it when I get to it, because they're not exactly what Christian sin looks like. I often tell people that Satanism is almost the antithesis of Christianity. Basically, in Satanism, you embrace all of those sins that you're told to ignore, like lust and greed and, I don't know, I can never name them all. but you know, you're told to like ignore those and be shameful of those and to hide them and they're bad. But it's like, if you look at that, all of those sins are just human desire and human indulgence. And with Satanism, it's kind of like, embrace those things, but you know, then people kind of argue the fact of, oh, well, you'll overindulge. And it's like, that may be true. Who is to draw that line, first of all? But also, it's basically up to the Satanists to realize, like, taking care of themselves. And, like, for me, the thought comes mostly with gluttony. Because if you embrace gluttony, you know, it could get bad. You know, you could get pretty heavy pretty fast. And for some people, if you're happy that way, that's the exact way you should be. But it's, you don't overindulge in the way that, like, you know, you're eating so much, you're becoming this person you don't want to be, and you're basically just not really looking out for yourself. Like, you have to be your own God, basically. That's what, when I use the term Satan, because I don't believe, I'm an atheistic Satanist, as many are, but there are theistic Satanists. I'm an atheistic Satanist, so when I talk about Satan, I'm actually referring to myself, because something that Anton LaVey really pressed was that you are your own God. You're gonna make your dreams and your goals happen yourself. You know, you can do magic rituals and you can do spells and sigils, but, and you know, you got to put in the hard work too. And totally lost my train of thought. So I think I'm just going to read to you guys a couple of different, like, I guess they're just lists about how to not even practice Satanism, because I'm not even going to get into actual Satanist practice in this video. But I will tell you guys a little bit more about Satanist theory, because honestly, I could go on for a long time, and it could probably sound pretty repetitive. But I'll read you guys the 9 satanic statements and then the sins, and we'll talk a little bit about those and kind of what they mean. And, yeah, so this goes a little bit, more with the indulging in your sins with the very first satanic statement. And it's that Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. And I think in this instance, oh God, lots of same sounds. But I think in this instance, abstinence doesn't just represent sex before marriage. I think, you know, abstinence from all things that would be considered a sin. 2, Satan represents vital existence over spiritual pipe dreams. So Satanism is a lot more real, I guess. Not to say that you can't have spiritual pipe dreams. I definitely would love to become enlightened one day, but it's more focusing on what's real and creating, you know, your own real world. 3, Satan represents undefiled wisdom over hypocritical self-deceit. So, I mean, it's one thing to not know something, but to have no desire to learn, you know, or to correct or whatever. Basically just always be seeking knowledge, always be seeking the truth, you know, question literally everything, no matter who tells you. Everything that you've heard in this video, go Google it, go research it, go have your own opinion about it, because what I'm telling you guys and everything that I will ever tell you guys comes from a combination of research I've done and my opinion. So the research I've done, you know, to me, I would say it's accurate, but other people might think that the information is wrong or they disagree with it or whatever. When it comes to magical, occult, spiritual, religious worlds, it's hard to find true facts because a lot of it is up in the air and a lot of it is decided by humans. So I always say, believe what you want to believe and screw all the rest, but at least know what the rest is. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted. So again, you're not going to be getting any love from anybody if you're not putting it out into the world. If you are undeserving of love, if you're selfish, if you're ignorant, not saying that those people are undeserving of love, but basically, I mean, if you don't deserve it, you shouldn't get it. 5, Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. So, yeah, and I mean, this could really look different in a lot of situations because you could be turning your cheek in the moment and knowing that you'll avenge them later. For me, that's how it works a lot of the time because I'm non-confrontational. So I'll say, okay, for now I will turn the other cheek, but I'll be hexing your ass when I get home. That's how I take care of my problems. Curses and hexes and banishing spells like nothing you've ever seen before. Okay, 6. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. That one's kind of got me. But I guess it's, you know, you shouldn't be worried about people reading your thoughts or basically a psychic vampire would be feeding off of you. So you don't need to worry about it. Okay, 7. Satan represents man just another animal, sometimes better, but more often worse. Because of man's divine, spiritual, and intellectual development, he has become the most vicious animal of all. And I think that's totally true. Because, and I was just talking to my boyfriend about this the other day, because we always talk about how, oh, well, bears have sharp claws and sharp teeth, and electric eels can shock you, and, you know, snakes have venom, and, you know, every animal kind of has its thing, like its defense, or, you know, every animal has its thing. And I was thinking, I was like, is our thing our brain? And he was like, I think so. Which sounds so silly. And I mean, some of you guys probably are just like, yeah, duh. But it's very true. Our defense is our brain. You know, we might not have sharp claws or sharp teeth, but we know how to sharpen something and use it as a weapon. And so that's how, kind of with this, it's like we almost have more weapons than the animals, because it's like, well, yeah, I've got my sharp teeth and claws, but if you cut those off, rip out your teeth, you're not going to know how to fight. You're not going to have the brain capacity to be like, well, what do I do now as a bear? But, you know, if you take away a human's blade, they can find something. And so I just think that kind of mind definitely elicits a huge ego as well. And I don't know, it can be pretty deadly. A huge ego compared with a brain, like a human brain. I don't know. Okay. Number 8. Satan represents all of those so-called sins as they lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. And that's exactly right. Like, I'm gonna try to write them all down. I should have done that before. But I want to try to talk about all of them. So I know that there's envy, lust, greed, and gluttony. Pride. I need 2 more. sloth. Okay, and there's one more. You guys, I'm sure somebody will tell me what it is. So some of these I actually don't really understand why you would want to embrace this. So this point here says, Satan represents all of these sins as they lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. And the first one I wrote down on my list is envy. So I'm going to put a question mark by envy because I don't understand how that could lead to any of those things. To me, if I'm envious of somebody, I don't feel good. I'm jealous of them. Like, I want what they have. But I think I might have a misconstrued definition of envy, or a difference between envy and jealousy, because I do believe they're different, and I'm not sure why. Lust, I can definitely see how you could get probably physical and emotional gratification from that. Greed, probably emotional and mental gratification. Gluttony, mental gratification and probably emotional gratification. Pride, emotional gratification. And sloth, physical gratification. So, and then whatever the other one is. So basically, you do get good feelings from most of the 7 deadly sins, and you're made to feel so horrible and dirty and weird because you like these things, but it's so normal. It's like human nature to want to give in to all of these things, and it's Satanist rule that you can. There's one more. 9. Satan has always been the very best friend the church has ever had, as he's always kept them in business. I mean, it's true, though. You have to have a bad guy in order to have a good guy. And for Christians, their bad guy became Satanists, and it was just a super easy target that they could keep coming back to. All right, so there are 9 satanic sins. I think that's going to be the last topic I cover today. I feel like I've just been talking like crazy. I'm not sure how long I want these videos to be. I'm probably going to usually post them without any editing or jump cuts or anything like that, because I just like the stream of consciousness, me flipping through my notes and sharing what I have. But honestly, I have no idea how this channel is going to go. This is episode 1. So I feel like I've shared a decent amount of information with you guys so far for episode 1. I didn't just want to make it an intro. And these, oh, I should have told you. I don't know if I did tell you. The 9 satanic statements and the 9 satanic sins come from the Church of Satan. What I read before, the 7 tenets of Satanism, that was the Satanic Temple. I want to get those two, I want you to know that they're different, and that these come from 2, I keep wanting to say two schools of thought, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I do believe that the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple practice differently, and they have a slightly different code, but I mean, it's not going to be that different. All right. One thing I do want to kind of explain to you guys, though, is Satanism is more about study than worship, at least for atheistic Satanists. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of trying to fact check and fact checking. There's just a lot of figuring out your truth, because you're going to read articles and you're going to be like, I believe this whole thing. And you're going to read articles and be like, they're full of shit. And that's okay. They could be written by the same person. That's okay. You just have to find the information that suits you the best. Because it doesn't matter what your mom says, or your dad says, or your priest, or your grandma, or some old witch who lives at the end of your street. It doesn't matter what any of them say. You're living your life. You know what makes sense to you. You know how you feel. You know what speaks to you and what calls out to you. Only believe that. Only believe what speaks out to you. because everything else is going to make things confusing and blurry, and it's going to make you question who you are and what you believe, and just know that if it makes sense, it's true. And that's going to be different for a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to disagree and say, no, religions have to have, it has to be this, this, and this, but not always. Welcome to Satanism. Here are the 9 satanic sins. Let me get to the page that actually has the 9 satanic sins. Embarrassing. I was just at it. Okay. The first one is stupidity. It's at the top of the list as it's a cardinal sin of Satanism. Ignorance is one thing, but our society thrives on stupidity. It depends on people just doing what they're told. And what I like to call them, and others like to call them, sheeple. It's going to be a popular term on here, I feel like. Satanists must learn to see through the tricks. We can't afford to be stupid. The second one is pretentiousness, which I actually do think this one is probably one that a lot of Satanists are guilty of. Because it can be really easy when you see yourself as higher up than everybody else, which I'll admit, sometimes I do. Sometimes I think I'm more intelligent because of my religion, and that can be wrong. That definitely can be wrong. I'm guilty of being pretentious. I don't always think it's fact, but there are definitely certain scenarios when I'm like, oh my God. And that's okay. It's okay. It feels bad, but it's okay. You're not hurting anybody by feeling a certain way. You're hurting someone by voicing it. And that's up to you. I don't believe in hurting other people physically or emotionally. I don't see a point. I don't get any gratitude from it. I feel a lot worse when I make someone feel bad. So if making people feel bad is a part of your thing, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to tell you to not do it, because it's your path and everybody's different. And I know that's really hard to swallow for a lot of people because, and I follow this personally, if it harm none, do what thou will. And I do have a problem with people hurting others, but you also have to realize it's not your job. Let's get into pretentiousness though, too. Pretentiousness. Empty posturing can be the most irritating and isn't applying the cardinal rules of lesser magic. On equal footing with stupidity for what keeps the money in circulation these days. Everyone's made to feel like a big shot, whether they are or not. And that's true. I think there's a lot of pressure to be Instagram famous and to, have the latest whatever and name brand this. And I just think it's all really silly. It's just another way to get us to think that we have to have this thing or this car or this shirt or these pair of shoes in order to be better than the person living next to us. It don't make any sense to me. This next one I'm kind of bad at pronouncing. It's solipsism. Solipsism? I don't know. There's gonna be a lot of that. This introduction video is just introducing you to all my bad habits that you're gonna get used to. Okay, solipsism can be very dangerous to Satanists. Projecting your reactions, responses, and sensibilities onto someone who is probably far less attuned than you are. It's a mistake of expecting people to give you the same amount of consideration and courtesy and respect that you naturally give them. So as everybody says, and most of them don't practice what they preach, but it's treat people how you want to be treated. And that's exactly what I do. But this, I used to be guilty of, and then sort of through my life learned, do unto others as they do unto you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. I treat people the way I want to be treated, because even if they're not going to treat me that same way, or they're not going to treat me with that much respect as well, I should still be nice to them. And this kind of, I'm going to use a really, like, just totally out of bounds, not out of bounds, but it's just not a very connected example, but it's just what popped into my head. I work in a bakery, so I work in a kitchen. There's dishes to do at the end of the day. And sometimes if I'm not working the next day and I'm doing the dishes, I'm like, you know, I could wash all these dishes and then just throw them in the basket and let them dry in the basket. Or I can actually go through and like hang up all the icing bags and, you know, line up all the spatulas. I can do it the right way. And this might be a super unrelatable example. Don't know. You know, I could put it all away the right way, and that would take a little longer, but it would feel nice. It would look nice, and it would be nice for whoever is coming in the next day. And sometimes I'll find myself like, man, you know, I could just get out of here and dump them all in the basket. But I wouldn't want to come into work and see that. So I don't. I never have. I've never just dumped it in the basket. Even though I know that when my coworkers wash the dishes, they will just dump them in the basket. But for me, it's like almost a principle thing, you know, like, well, I'm still going to do the right thing by me. I say right thing because right, wrong, nobody knows. It's opinion. All right. Number 4, self-deceit. This appears in the 9 satanic statements, but it deserves to be repeated here as it's another cardinal sin. We must not pay homage to any of the sacred cows presented to us, including the roles we are expected to play ourselves. The only time self-deceit should enter us is when it's fun, with awareness, which doesn't really make it deceitful. So that one's kind of a hard example to give because I don't really have one myself, unless it's like a drunken experience or a stoned experience or something like that. Yeah. This next one, though, I'm a big fan of, or I guess advocate against. I don't know. I think it's really important, though, to be on this list of sins, and it's 5, herd community, herd conformity. And it's obvious from a satanic stance that this would be on the list. It's all right to conform to a person's wishes if ultimately it benefits you, but only fools will follow along with the herd and letting an impersonal entity dictate you and what you like and what you listen to and what you watch and what you wear and what you eat and what social media you go on. Like, it's all decided and presented to you. And actually, do I get into that later? There is just one point I want to make while I'm on the topic of herd conformity, and I know that I have it in my notes here somewhere. But I might save it for another time if I can't find it right now. Okay. So this one, and I'll probably get into this again and bring it up another time, but it's basically avoid popular amusements. Don't be an ostrich with its head in the sand. TV is not entertainment. Stop. Consider everything you do. Everything you buy, see, listen to. Is it popular? If it is, it's probably programmed. And that's not to say you can't like Taylor Swift and you can't go on Instagram. I do one of those things. But I guess it's being aware, and again, it's all right to conform if it ultimately benefits you, but really watch that decision, make it. And, do you have to listen to this kind of music? And, do you like it because it's popular and all your friends are listening to it and it's on the radio and it's what's new? Or do you really like it? And that can be so hard to look into yourself and be like, What's influencing me? Is it me? Is it my friends? Is it the TV? Is it the radio? There's so many different things out there that can force us to make decisions that we don't really agree with, which is so messed up, and it's so weird to think about. But if we were all still living in, you know, I don't know, the 60s or 70s, I'm sure there's always influences. But with the lack of modern technology, there was a serious lack of influences. And I don't know, I really wish I could go back to a time like that where it seemed like you could actually have your own conventional thoughts. And I try to now. We all should try to. So yeah, stay away from that herd conformity and be yourself. And this next one kind of ties in with it, and it's lack of personality. Never lose sight of who you are, and what a threat you can be, just with your own existence. And that is not just directed towards each individual, it totally is, but as a Satanist, you are such a threat, you are such a fear to probably most of your community. If you're where I am, I think that even far left people would probably scoot away or leave the room if they knew that there was a real live practicing Satanist inside. We are making history, and we are, and it's true, because to be a Satanist has never been popular, and it still isn't. And it's not like that's the only goal, is to do all the unpopular things, because that can get super annoying and super pretentious, like our number 2 sin. Always keep the bigger picture in mind. Know that you are working on another level entirely from the rest of the world. And that can really go to your head. So I'm not going to say any more about that or how I feel about it, because I think I might just mess up my words. I'm not going to be able to get it right, because it's a feeling. I'm on an entirely different level. I'm not better, but I see the world very differently from most everyone else, except for Satanists. When I say me, I'm talking about us. All right, we got 3 more, you guys. Number 7, forgetfulness of past orthodoxies. Be aware that this is one of the keys to brainwashing people into accepting something new and different, when in reality it's something that was once widely accepted, but it is now presented in a new package. We are expected to rave about the genius of the creator and forget the original. And this makes for a disposable society. So this, I'm not sure, they're probably talking about something more specific in this. I don't know exactly, but I always go to the obvious example of the Holocaust. That's sort of happening again. And it happened before. It happened before the Holocaust happened. And we just really, I don't know, somehow those things are forgotten. I guess at least the beginning of what it looked like was forgotten, and everybody just knew the ends, and they were like, how could this have happened? And then once it starts to happen to their own society, they don't even realize it until it's too late, because they only remember the end half of the first story. 8, counterproductive pride. I feel like this goes with pretentiousness. Pride is great up to the point where you throw out the baby with the bathwater. If it works for you, great. When it stops working for you, when you've painted yourself into a corner and the only thing to do is to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, then you have to fix what you've done. Because it's really easy to just get all high and mighty and go on a Satanist rampage about how Christmas is a pagan holiday, and this and that about God. But you really have to one, look at your audience, because that kind of pride won't seem that bad in an audience of like-minded individuals. Okay, number 9, and this one I think is kind of funny, but it's important, and I can't tell you why. It's a very thought-based thing, and it's lack of aesthetics. The physical application of the balance factor. Aesthetics is important and should be cultivated. You don't have to spend fortunes to appeal to modern ideas of beauty. But having an eye for style, balance, it can be a great magical tool for Satanists. Aesthetics is personal, based on one's style, but there are universal, pleasing, harmonious configurations that should not be denied. So, always have the importance of style in mind. Always have, you want to be presentable as a person, and you want your home to look the way you like it, like your style. And it's kind of hard to explain why it's an important part of Satanism, because it's so much different than any other religion. Like, that wouldn't be a sin in Christianity, is not being aesthetically pleasing, but it's just one of those things, You might not feel like you're a beautiful person, but I don't know, you should still strive for the look that you want with what you have. So I think that Satanism can be very easy to get along with and very difficult to get along with. For me, it's super easy. I'm talking about, like, in general, I can definitely see certain things that people might disagree with, and there are totally things in there that I disagree with, or things that, I feel that I haven't exactly read in a Satanist way, but your belief system and your religion should always be DIY. You should always be able to pick and put in what you like, and, take out all the bad. Never feel pressured to believe something or do anything a certain way. Like, I just think in the world of religion, even witchcraft, there's so much pressure to follow a path. And you don't have to do anything a certain way. You don't have to do anything anybody else tells you. You just have to stay true to yourself. And this was such a much longer video than I thought it was going to be. I really thought I was going to struggle to talk for 20 minutes, and it's been almost an hour. So I might edit this. We'll see. We might learn how to do jump cuts. But this was a really great... I had a lot of fun talking about Satanism for so long, because I never get to do it. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this video with you guys and hearing the feedback, positive or negative. I'm excited for it either way. And hey, if you think I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I would love to know why. Anyway, you guys, it was really wonderful being here for the first time, and I really hope that I'm consistent with this, because I think that YouTube is going to be really fun, and I want to be able to be a legitimate Satanist for you guys. I want to be able to give you information that might be harder to come by, and I don't know. I always like watching YouTube videos when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I just can't find like a regular Satanist. Like, it's always a lot of drama, and I would love to meet other witches and other Satanists. So yeah, I don't know, drop me a message, find me on Instagram. I might have things on the screen if I figure out how to do that, or I might have things down there. We'll see, wherever it is. I mean, all I use is Instagram, so find me there. Bye, guys.